The great tree of Kakin is diseased and rotten. Hello and welcome back to Suck War Central. My name is CJ, and I believe that quite a few people, both in and out of the world of Hunter x Hunter, are laboring under a bit of a misapprehension. You see, many of the more noble-minded characters believe that if someone reasonable like Halkenberg or Zhang Lei were to win the succession war, the violence would stop there. Some might even be so bold or idealistic as to say a truly noble leader like Halkenberg can fix the country. However, I firmly believe that this is completely impossible by design. Let's dive into why. The Kakin Empire, like any major country, is no stranger to turmoil and transformation. From its very beginnings, it was surrounded by hostile neighbors and had to take extreme measures in order to survive. Extreme measures such as sacrificing every potential ruler and leaving only one survivor. Right from the outset, we can see that this is a ruthless way to organize a society. If a country's rulers have access to Nen, then there are all sorts of different ways to maximize its effectiveness besides just killing a bunch of people. However, this choice is a showcase of the ideology at the very heart of the Kakin Empire, a twisted, hierarchical version of survival of the fittest. According to said ideology, those who rule do so because of their superior strength and cunning, thus granting them the ultimate decision-making authority. While most monarchies believe in the divine right of kings, Kakin believes in might makes right. Accordingly, all who are below them are nothing but fodder, subhuman tools to be used however the rulers see fit. This explains why Kakin even has a caste system. It's just another natural expression of the same idea. The philosophy of the so-called weak as nothing but tools can be seen very obviously in the Succession War, where dead princes are used as fuel for some sort of as of yet unknown grander purpose. However, it's also evident in how Terror Sandwich chops up women for the sake of art, an activity which, I'd like to note, appears to be facilitated by government agents. Granted, those agents might be private, but Terror Sandwich's crimes do appear to be an open secret amongst the royals, so they, at the very least, look the other way. Kakin's rotten ideology also manifests in its carnivals, barbaric atrocities inflicted upon the lower classes in which people are nothing but meat. The way those people then go on to be funneled into the mafia, which are in turn tools of the princes, further accentuates that people only exist to be tools for Kakin's rulers. The last example of this philosophy I want to bring up is the practice of afterlife companions. In order to prevent princes who have fallen in the succession war from rising up as vengeful spirits, in other words, as specters of post-mortem Nen, people from the lowest caste were chosen as sacrifices to be killed alongside them and keep them company in death. This was probably some sort of sacrifice-based Nen ability, but once again, it shows us that characteristic Kakinian ideology. So we've explored the ways in which Kakin is royally messed up, sure, but it's also important to note that Kakin seems to have undergone significant changes from its bloody and barbaric past. For instance, the custom of selecting afterlife companions for deceased princes has been abolished. The monarchy supposedly no longer has absolute power, and Kakin has undergone a process referred to as its democratization. This, sparked by something about which we know very little called the most silent revolution in history, was meant to bring Kakin into the modern era and wash away its grim past. The aforementioned revolution took place over 30 years ago now. However, as noted by Morena Prudo, nothing has really changed. While you'd assume the carnivals would stop after the monarchy lost its stranglehold on the power structure, they have, in fact, continued in secret. Other supposed reforms are for naught as well. The afterlife companion system still lives on in a different form under the direction of Second Prince Camilla. Now, upon first reading, the explanation of the afterlife companion system that Togashi provided seems a bit out of place in the backstory of how Camilla let the have-nots join her personal army. It doesn't have any direct connection to the rights she gave them or the loyalty they feel towards her, nor is the practice mentioned again in the description of their curse ability. However, the reason Togashi included it is very simple, to show us that the Kakin Empire doesn't change. Not really. The idea of making the have-nots use an ability that sacrifices their lives to activate a curse and accompany their designated prince to their death is basically just a new form of the afterlife companion practice. The poor are still being used as fodder for Nen abilities that benefit the royals. As for all this stuff about democratization and Kakin undergoing a revolution, I must pose a question. What, dear viewers, do we know about Kakin's parliament? What do we know about the arms of the government that aren't composed of royals, but of elected officials? The Succession War is a story rife with incredibly detailed and complex political intrigue, after all. Government motions and policies are frequently discussed. And despite all that, we know nothing about Kakin's parliament. When Benjamin enacts his martial law plan, he doesn't talk about convincing Parliament of anything. It's the Zodiacs and Kakin Justice Bureau who he needs under his control. Why? Because they are responsible for enforcing laws. Who the hell is Parliament? They do nothing. That, my friends, is exactly the reason Togashi hasn't shown us anything about the Kakin Parliament. They're nothing, they're nobodies, they have no power. The royal family of Kakin talks like being king means having absolute control over the country, and that's because this is basically the truth. This makes it obvious that Kakin's supposed democratization is nothing but a sham to pacify the people and legitimize the nation in the eyes of the rest of the world. Though we don't know much about it, the event that led to Kakin's supposed democratization gives the whole thing away just via its name. The most silent revolution in history? Yeah, right! Throughout history, kings don't exactly have a track record of giving up power quietly. It was silent because it wasn't a real revolution, and it wasn't any kind of threat to the king. If it was, you'd best believe it wouldn't have been silent. So enough yapping about how Kakin hasn't actually changed. Let me tell you why Kakin can't change. See, the whole Succession War is about perpetuating the cycle. I have no doubt that the Succession War is designed to enforce the system as it is. The Blade of Divine Favor is meant to be passed on to the next king of Kakin, and we can assume that like the Seed Urn and the Lotus Anchorite, it is a powerful Nen-imbued artifact with some grand purpose and ability. Just as the Seed Urn and Lotus Anchorite lock participants into the Succession War, the Blade of Divine Favor may very well lock the next king into ruling in a certain way, a way that comports with the conditions of a similarly powerful Nen ability. Of course, it's also possible that the enforcement mechanisms of this cycle are more passive than that. After all, the Succession War itself is a selection process that rewards the use of other human lives like pawns in a game. It reflects the same ideology as that which governs the Kakin Empire, and to refuse to use other people like tools puts one at a severe disadvantage in the contest. It even encourages several princes to follow this path by directly giving them abilities which use other people as tools. Now, surely, Prince Halkenberg, who wants to end the injustices of the Kakin Empire, wouldn't stoop that low, would he? Oh no. Okay, well, you can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs, and sometimes sacrifices have to be made for the greater good, right? Yeah, I have my doubts. I think the Succession War is designed to condition even noble and well-intentioned princes like Halkenberg to view human lives as tools. I mean, they kind of have to do that in order to survive. Those who refuse to see things this way are killed. Those who adapt are forever corrupted. And this allows Kakin's ideology to perpetuate itself throughout generations. A bit more evidence for this idea is the fact that King Nasabi seems incredibly sure his son's principles will be defeated. Halkenberg threatens to upend everything that Kakin stands for, yet Nasabi is completely unperturbed. He says, "Tell me you don't need a king after you become one," as if to say, by the time all this is over, your views won't be a problem anymore. Even worse, by endeavoring to become king through the Succession War, Halkenberg has already conceded to Nasabi's premise. Unlike Kurapika, he's not searching for a way to disrupt the Succession War, he's seeking to win, and that choice was what assured his moral downfall. One way or another, by active coercion or passive coercion, even if Halkenberg becomes king, he will not reform the Kakin Empire into a more just society as he currently seeks to. If Halkenberg wins, he will be a product of the system of succession, and like with the most silent revolution in history, the system will not destroy itself. It's designed to continue. I mean, do you really believe, dear viewer, that Halkenberg is unique? You really think there were no other princes throughout all the generations that the Succession War has been running who wanted to win so that they could change the system? I'm sure there were, but the system either selected them out or molded them into different people. That is the true trap of the Succession War. If you become the person you need to be in order to survive it, you become a person who will keep it going until the end of time. For all her evil, Morena has a pretty good point about the Kakin Empire. It cannot be reformed from the inside. In fact, it's designed to be impossible for that to happen. That's why Kakin's government must not be seized, it must not be fixed, it must not be changed. For the people under its rule to be released from their suffering, it must be destroyed. With all that being said, I hope you enjoyed this rather unpleasant dive into why Haukenberg winning the succession war won't really matter. I hope you'll join me next time for another Hunter x Hunter Yap session, and I also hope you have a wonderful day.